Welcome back to the Bigwater Podcast. Here we are again doing a little sit-down talk. We are out fishing today, and of course, that's generally what we're going to talk about is a little bit of fishing. And we've got some guys on that are a little richer from fishing, which you don't often hear. Normally, to be a millionaire with fishing, you have to start as a billionaire, I've heard. That is the word. But we've got two guys on here, and we're not going to mess around. We're going to bring them on, and they just won a little over 300K. Right, boys? Why don't you give a little introduction?
Good evening, Ross. My name is Ed Hatten. I live in Hastings, New York.
We've got Len here with us, right?
Yeah. My name's Len Heffron. Live in Clay, New York, just outside of Syracuse, New York.
So you guys are the envy of many people, right? Probably, I would say 12,000, but that number might be higher because there were some other ding-dongs that probably didn't get in. We actually had a guy, a comment, boss lady may chime in on this because she looks at all the comments for us to make sure nobody's being too naughty. And there was a guy said he was guaranteed to win the fall brawl, but he just didn't have time. And he had a bunch of things to support that of why he, would have definitely won because he's done his research. So I'll be interested talking to you guys on your philosophy on some of these things, because I don't want to, take away from either one of you guys at all. But would you say that there's fair enough that there's a little bit of luck, even though you guys are, you're skilled fishermen, but yet with any, I don't care if you're fishing a little derby or, what is just like today, like making the right decisions and getting that one fish. And that's kind of the thing. You guys do a little bit of tournament fishing, which I'm sure we'll get into, but that's the thing you often hate as a guy who I fished a lot of tournaments early in my career where you didn't like 1-day tournaments because you felt that sometimes there was, that little bit of a jackpot, aspect of it, right? Instead of, a guy that maybe had a 3-day tournament because it was just, you really had to put it together, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Ross. Obviously, anytime that you're out fishing, there is a fair amount of luck. Sometimes you have to make it yourself, but I would say that being in the right place at the right time sometimes does pay out.
But I think there's awful lot of fishermen, maybe like Al Linder or Kevin Van Dam, that you can't after maybe 20 or 30 or 40 years say that they're lucky. So a lot of those same guys kind of seem to have the maybe lucky through persistence. How about that? But so why don't you give us a little background before we even get into the nitty gritty here and tell us, like kind of how we got there, right? So, there are guys that, fish this thing because again, I've got guide clients who haven't ever climbed in a boat and they're like, oh, sure, I'll sign up for the fall brawl, right? And that's one aspect of it. But you guys do a lot of fishing and you've done some tournament stuff. So give me a background a little bit on both you guys.
I'll say that Lenny kind of got me into more or less the tournament fishing. I'm going to guess probably 16, 17 years ago that we had some friends out on an idle lake that kind of saw us as easy money. And, we were pretty good at catching fish, but we realized early on in our tournament career that catching the right fish is not just going out and catching fish.
You guys don't happen to know my buddy Todd Frank, do you, over there?
I've run across him once or twice. He's from the same hometown that I am, up in Pulaski.
Yeah, exactly. He still lives right there. He's on the tail end of that stuff. He now works as a rep. He fished on the tournament trail many, many years ago, but he fished that New York Walleye trail back when you actually still had to qualify for the PWT. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think he won like 5 out of 6 events there in a row. This was going back probably 25 years, and I guess they led him in the PWT, and the rest is history. But
I'd say that his reputation of being a good stick is pretty widespread up here.
Yep. So give us a little bit, you go from doing some of these small tournament things, right? To now, are you doing some Lake Erie Walleye Trail? Is that correct? Or
yeah, we tried to, it goes back to our buddies who thought we were easy money, and Ed and I don't sit back and we don't like losing at anything. We improved our game out here to be, pretty good on our local area. And then we figured we needed another challenge. So the next step for us seemed to be the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. And, Jason Fisher and those guys that run that thing, it's just a phenomenal thing. And we thought we were dead money out there at first, but we're trying to improve and finishing better and better every event. So we're just trying to up our skill set and learn from a lot of guys that we've learned and now call true friends, like like our mutual buddy Johnny Gilman.
Oh God,
I love the guy, and he'll answer the phone whenever I call or text him or whatnot. And just meeting guys like that, trying to improve your skills and learning from guys like that, it's awesome having those lifelong friends now.
Do you know how we find out if John actually watches this? I tell you a brief story about John. John is obviously a very good fisherman. I don't even like putting that in anywhere that's going to be around, but me and him have fished together a lot, and going back probably almost 25 years, I'm going to guess. It's not quite that, but it's close. And there was a guy that walked up to him in a bait shop. And this is back when I was kind of getting a lot of the media presence and things with my own stuff. And this guy walked up and he's like, "Hey, are you John Gilman?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he kind of looks at me because, I was getting more press. John obviously has a full-time job, and he kind of, as you guys know, people listening to this watch the John Gilman podcast may laugh. But long story short, this guy goes, "What happened? You used to be good." Unglued. I could not. And I'm just like, and here's this guy. And you just, on one aspect, I can't stop laughing, but the other, you're like, if you fished against John and you put up $1 and he put up 10 grand, like, he's still going to win every single time. But the public, right? Dealing with the public. So
one of those things you can't control.
But I think honestly, like, maybe again, this is off topic a little bit, but maybe see if you guys agree with this. Even if you're, as you say, easy money. So these guys that are listening to this that aren't tournament fishermen, there are people that are donators, we call them. And there are guys that just become lifelong donators. But I think sometimes you learn the most by realizing, because us fishermen are a little stubborn, I think. And sometimes you're like, well, and especially on Erie, like you guys are listening to this, you maybe on Lake Winnebago or something, and catching 5 fish can be quite the feat. We're out here, if you don't catch 40 or 50, and I'm slightly exaggerating, but people don't feel like that's a win. And you feel like you did good because you caught so many fish, and then you realize, like, hey, we were catching 4 and 5 pounders, and somebody put together 6 or 7s. Like, there's no lying with that. And so, yeah, maybe you donated $500, between you two guys, but maybe $250 is actually a really, really cheap lesson to, what happened. And then those guys on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, kind of divulging some of that stuff. And, it's a good thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take you back to a story, Ross, when Lenny and I first started tournament fishing.
I like stories.
We were early in the career, and we were having a rough day. And I think this is where things really changed for Lenny and I. It was probably about 11 o'clock, and we still hadn't put a walleye in the boat. And Oneida Lake's got a lot of walleye, but Lenny and I were struggling. And we got to one point that we were seriously debating the type of angling that we were going to be doing in this bay. And I'll say that it came to a couple of redheads that were pretty heated. It could have been close to, I'll say it came close to, somebody going over the side of the boat. And it was at that point, we caught 1 fish. And I think we ended the day with a 3-foot sturgeon. That we thought was obviously not what we were looking for. But we realized early on at that point that, hey, when we go out tournament fishing, it's fishing. Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to find days that you're going to strike out. You're not going to do well. But that's yet just another lesson that you learn and more information that you get. And, we took that day and from that point on, we know there's going to be some days that we're going to have a lot of success, and there's going to be days that we're going to struggle. And those days, like I said, they're just another learning experience. But at the end of the day, you've got to go out and if you're not fishing, you're not learning. And if you're not learning, you might as well stay home. So for the guys that even hit the struggle bus at times, you're out fishing. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah, I've got a buddy of mine, his kid, it's kind of the same thing. You're getting some life lessons with this thing. And he's just like, when we're whooping on him and he's not liking it. And I'm like, listen, he's ripped up. He looks like he's, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm like, do you like leg days when you first got going? Like, nobody likes doing something, and that's what they need to do the most, right? And I think that's like with fishing. You got to get your ass kicked a few times on something to become better at whatever it is. And, the quicker you get that over with, the better you're going to be.
Yeah, one of the things that we tell anybody that we were ever trying, I mean, not that we're pros by any stretch of the imagination, but one thing we learned is that it doesn't matter if you're talking to the top guy or the guy that finished last. Somebody's always got a technique or something like that that you can put in your memory bank to just keep building it, so that if you come across one situation, you're like, hey, that old timer said that he used this and that, maybe that'll work in this situation. And we're always willing to listen to anybody that'll tell us anything. And just trying to put that together is helped us be better tournament fishermen. Our goal is to start cashing in the loot. We're like right on that edge, and not from being out there. It's trying to make friends out there and learning from guys and listening to all those guys and trying to figure out the migratory stuff. And it's definitely a lot bigger lake than our home lake. And trying to figure out the currents and everything, just listening to everybody and putting that all together to try to compete and be that crew that's possibly going to cash in one of those events.
Yeah, I think, if people thought you hear this 100 million walleyes in Lake Erie, and it's like, well, it's also like an ocean out there too. You know what I mean? This isn't like a little bucket, and it's amazing on how fast those fish disappear. You know what I mean? You're out there, and then the next day, and you're like, what happened? And I think a lot of people listening, to this, again, you got to remember a lot of these people are maybe from South Dakota, North Dakota. We've got a pretty diverse crowd, and a lot of Canada even. And so maybe they aren't even coming to Lake Erie, but I think a lot of these guys also, I get a lot of these comments, and they're like, well, we're not tournament fishing. And I think sometimes we can almost, even in this conversation, just change our verbiage a little bit and be like fishing, right? Because that's obviously what you guys, and I asked you that question. But for people listening to this, maybe if you're not going to fish tournaments, just ignore that one word, because those same exact things apply to what you're doing and what we're going to talk about, which is big money fish, right? So
all that helps you catch more fish.
Yeah, I mean, tournament fishing it lets you know quicker that you're getting your ass whooped or you're not. That's the simple way of putting it. Because again, living on Lake Erie, and as a guy, I make my complete living doing just that. It is amazing on you go out there, and when you think you're doing good, or when you think you haven't. I mean, I won a tournament on Erie many moons ago with 18 pounds. And my old man partner there, that was kind of my like second dad, his whole thing was, you've won, and now you're going to lose with class, because I was like, you go weigh them in, right? One of those deals, like, I'll take the boat this time. And, so you just never know what's going to happen. Even Erie sometimes doesn't give it up, and the bar is changed. And I think even a good example is I hear people, on my boat all the time, like, oh yeah, we caught 3 12s last week. And I'm thinking, and I have to be a little diplomatic sometimes. I'm often very not good at it. But, you guys were the only ones to eclipse 12 pounds. Is that correct?
I think there was two or three.
No, there's, us and one other one. Yeah, there was definitely one other one.
So out of, again, not exact numbers, but let's say 12,000 plus people that are fishing for roughly a 5-6 week period, for 2 of those to be caught, there's just, I always say there's a lot of eyeball 10s in my boat, but there's 7 on a scale. So
we'll get there.
We got a good one. We got a good scale story too.
Yeah. So
with that fish.
Well, let's just break out. Why hold back? Just throw the scale story right at us.
I'll let Ed tell the story, and then when it gets to the scale, I can tell the scale part.
So we haven't determined who the butt of this joke is yet, but I think I got it.
Oh, there is no joke.
Oh no, there was no joke.
I'll say, Russ, we were fishing an area outside of Vermilion, and it's an area that in 21, it was our first year fishing the Brawl. Lenny wasn't out here. It was out with another guy from New York here, Jake Pollock. And we didn't know about the Slam. We knew about the Brawl. We came out. It was my first year with a big water boat. And so we were fishing a mark that we had gotten one that was just under 11 pounds in 21. Fished the same spot last year, only pulled a 7-pounder. But when this fish hit, we got it in the boat, and we both looked at it, and we'll get back to the story of catching this. But when it hit the floor of the boat, we both knew that it was big. And Lenny was like, where's your scale? So I handed him the little Rapala scale that we have, and we always keep 2 on the boat, regardless. But I handed it to Lenny, and he's hooking it on and picking the fish up, and the thing's flopping around, and it said 7 pounds. And he looked at it and he was like, put it back down and reset the scale and, picked it back up and measured it again. And it was a little over 8 pounds. And he's like, dude, this isn't right. And so he says, hey, where's your other scale? So I grabbed the other scale and handed it to him. And, he picked it up. And as soon as it started flopping around, it was at 11:14. And we both looked at each other and our mouths opened up. And, the second time he reset it and picked it up, it was over 12. And we're like, okay, we just got to pack this thing in. And so he's messing with the scale on the fish. And I'm in the back of the boat trying to take the divider out of the live well because that fish wasn't going to fit in the way that it was. So I'll let Lenny expand on that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was just one of those things that you look at and you shake your head. And
note to self: have 2 scales or extra batteries too, right?
Yeah.
And that goes back to just knowing the fish. Where I mean, I'm sure you could get it within an ounce or two every fish you pull on the boat, and it's knowing what those fish weigh. And it's like, okay, that's a 5-pounder, that's a 7-pounder. You just know from catching so many fish and tournament fishing. And when I saw those weights, I'm like, there is no way this is only an 8-pound fish. This thing is way over this. And then that's when I asked for the other scale. But we had chats after it all settled down, and it's people that are out there, and it's they're just trying to go for that and really don't know. Would you have thought that somebody might have looked at that and said, "Oh, this is only an 8-pounder," and not brought it in because they wouldn't have cashed? I mean, I don't think that would have happened. But if you're truly reading the scale,
that happens. And I'm not saying fall brawl walleye stuff or walleye slam or whatever, but I'm here to tell you the amount of records, because I do a lot of media work with magazines and stuff outside just of walleyes, and the amount of records that are caught by somebody. Well, in theory, our walleye record was caught by somebody catfishing. You do realize that, and they ate that. And that's one of the reasons there's so many discrepancies. But, there's so many records and even like sunfish, all kinds of different things that people don't even know what species they are. Subspecies or whatever, like even bass. I mean, believe it or not, like warmouth and all these subspecies, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's just a smallmouth, or that's not a spotted bass. And so, no, you're right. I mean, it is funny. And then it's kind of a joke with me and some of my buddies. You see these people and you wonder if their scales are broke because they're weighing in 3-4 pounders all the time. And I don't know if they should want their face on the Facebook page or whatever the deal is. But you're like, do people have, because I think there is a certain percentage of that being serious, that people don't have a perception of what it is going to take to do this like you do. Like somebody that just gets in because they're like, hey, for $30 I could win a boat. And I think, again, I think the guy that was in second place, at least in one of the trails there, he caught it from shore. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that like, this is a pretty good deal. Like there's a lot of things in life we've all, I'm sure I don't want to speak for you guys, but we've wasted a lot of money on stuff and just probably custom painted crankbaits for one entry fee to try to win a couple boats. Right. So you guys are the living dream of that. But I think some people, they don't. I think you'd be surprised that they have no concept of what's really going on. I mean, people book walleye trips with me. We put one in the boat and they're like, so is that a perch? And you're like, well, I mean, it's 5-pounder. I mean, I'm like, I'm not sure who should be more slighted here, but at any rate. But, and that kind of goes back to my thing. I think of a quote that Craig Lewis from the Walleye Slam and one of the original guys with the Fall Brawl back before that, he said to me on a podcast, he said, Ross, there are some of the best fishermen that me and you both know, and without naming names, and he said, and they don't even get close to a wayfish. And we had a guy win, and this is, I don't remember, but 2-3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was. And he said, we had a guy that won our derby and he fished for 1 hour and 15 minutes, the entire event. Went out, and again, I don't even want to use the L word there because of that, but so bringing in more with you guys, with, if somebody's listening to this and hopefully they're trying to improve their chances with fishing. Let's not even say just, winning a derby or something. Like, hopefully that's the concept that people should have here is, did you guys have a game plan coming into this? Because you're going to have that guy who he just went fishing because he could, and he went for 1 hour and, hey, I caught a fish. This is pretty big. I'm going to go weigh it in. But I'm guessing you guys had a little more of a game plan from what your tournament stuff here, and coming from New York, you just didn't happen here on the weekend for a day. So let's work through that.
So Ross, I'll say that we booked our trip back in July of this year. So I mean, we take the same week off. It's later in the Derby. It's later in the Derby, and so we know the fish are feeding. The water temperature starting to drop down on Lake Erie. The shad are in. So we had a game plan of fishing down towards the Huron, Vermilion area. We fished some Cleveland last year. But I mean, from that standpoint, yeah, we had a game plan of where we wanted to target. I'll say that we also follow a lot of the fishing that's happened over the last couple of years of where the fish have been caught and the time of year that it is. But we also go out knowing what we know from a fish standpoint and looking for marks, looking for the right marks, so that's where our game plan started. We started off in Huron, and I'll say that coming out of the river there, the shad, the depth finder was actually, the alarm was going off for the shallow water alarm. We're in 25 feet of water, but there was 19 foot of shad stacked up in the river. So I mean, it's setting off at 6 feet, and Lenny was like, "What's that sound?" And I'm like, "Dude, that's the shallow water alarm." And there's no way that we're in 6 foot of water here. So,
and it's still, even today, that is still like literally, I just got off the water a few hours ago, and that's literally still the case. There's so many shad stacking up in certain areas there. So, and that's another thing for guys here that I'm sure you guys can chime in on here is, our gizzard shad, we're on the northern edge of that. I don't know if you know, and they get 20 some inches long, and they mark just like walleyes, people listening to this. And there's a lot of people. Matter of fact, I was out on with the fisheries guys, and we were doing some gill nets sampling, and like, gill nets have no conscience. Okay. I can't use my joke here. You have to fish with me to hear the second half of that, so I don't get fired. But, you got 300-foot strings of gill nets, no conscience, like they get everything, right? And there was a bunch of guys fishing around them, and it was funny because one of the head biologists was like, "I think these guys think all these marks are walleyes," and we pulled up those nets, and I'm telling you, they couldn't clear them. I had to put the camera down and help them clear the nets because there was thousands of these gizzard shad, and they are like, they're sizable. Actually, for guys listening to this, if they've missed some of our other podcasts, after I think it's 8-9 months, they become too large to eat. That's how quick they grow for walleyes. So,
Ross, I'll let Lenny tell you, but we thought we had the winning fish about 10 o'clock that day.
And the thing is for people that don't fish Lake Erie, all the other lakes that we fish, the fish bite the lures and are usually on either middle hook or back hook. I don't know what steroids the fish on Lake Erie are on, but I bet you 50% of the fish you catch if you're crankbait fishing have all 3 hooks in them, are coming in sideways. But we had one that we thought was the game winner. It's like, oh my God, this fish is huge. But it happened to be, I think it was like a 20-inch shad coming in sideways with all 3 hooks in it. We were fighting it forever. Our forearms are blowing up, but those things get so big, and we caught a bunch of them, but yet it was one of those sideways. But yet we thought we had the game-winning walleye, never came up. We're like, okay. And then finally, 20, 30 yards behind the boat, you see it, and it's like, are you kidding me? We just wasted all this time on this thing, slowing the boat down, everything, because you just couldn't move it.
Well, and here's a little, here's a little tip that I would tell you on that is baits like, and I don't want to jump ahead too much here, so you just hold on to your britches, but baits like the Rapala Gold Miner, which I helped design, it's a louder rattle, comparable to something you guys might have been using. And when you have those baits like that with 3 hooks, a lot of our local big boat guys, which I call them lazy, they tell me they're being efficient. That's their term. They take off that front hook because, have you noticed, and like the bait that you guys were using, when you hook them with that, to your point of hooking with all 3, they tend to hit it head first, and then the other hooks swing around and get them. And now all of a sudden you're literally, like you said, because people in my boat, that don't fish, they're like, oh, we just snagged this thing. Oh my God, it's coming in sideways. And you're like, when you get it in, you see that front hook is in its mouth, but now he's contorted himself and all over the place. And I don't know about taking, hooks off of crankbaits. That makes me nervous too. But sometimes it seems like, especially when you're going faster, that's a bad deal with getting hooked up funky.
Yeah, that's some of the thing that, fishing out there, you got to get the baits that, they tend to like. And those Walleyes, I kind of like those because
that has no
another
front hook
famous
too, right?
thing, but they don't have the front hook. They do have some nice colors as well.
Yep. So backing up a little bit, I'm interested to hear kind of some of your stuff, and you can feel free to pin on me. This is your chance but from year to year, I would say when I say Cleveland, obviously there's a lot of ports and a lot of water there, but like Cleveland versus Huron, maybe even the islands, it seems like there's a drastic, one is way better than the other. And Cleveland often gets a lot of attention, a lot more than it used to, but this year it was definitely Huron, because I've got a lot of buddies that live down in Cleveland, and when I seeing their trailers every single day and they're driving through the Dead Man's Curve and coming an hour down here, I already know where I'm not going. And so what you kind of talked about that with, planning your stay and tracking a little bit of where things are at. I mean, I think sometimes you kind of have to be live in the game and make an audible. So what was the philosophy with that? Or did you guys, throughout this week or whatever it was period, did you, go to different ports, each day? Or
Ross, we've done a lot of loot tournaments that we book a week's vacation, and we may only get out a day or two of pre-fishing. That's the thing with Lake Erie is we didn't come in on Saturday because you had big wind, and initially we weren't even going to come in. The forecast just wasn't good, and
it hasn't been good since 22.
So regardless, we came in on Sunday, and we planned on starting out in Huron. The big fish that the second place guy had caught, he had caught it right out of the river there, coming out of Huron. So we figured we'd start there and start trolling down on the rocks outside of there. We were marking bait, so I mean, we knew that the walleye be around there. But I'll tell you what, it started off. We didn't catch a fish. We didn't have a fish in the boat by I think 8:30. We were on the water at 6, and we were covering a lot of ground, scoping for fish, but we didn't see them. So we did call an audible, and we figured we'd start heading east. So I mean, yeah, that's the nice thing about fishing is you got a boat and you got a motor and you're going to burn some gas, and we came down here to find some fish, and we don't have a lot of intel outside of what we see. We've got a few friends that are out here, but everybody's competing in
well,
this.
yeah, when boats are on the line, intel becomes fuzzy. Fishermen are
Exactly.
lying SOBs anyhow, let alone when you got something like this going on. I've seen guys I know that don't even talk to their neighbors over this whole thing, which is a downside that's, I don't think, a good thing, but nevertheless. But
I agree with you there, Russ. You got to share some information.
Yeah. But you know how it is. It's just like anything else. You can erase fishermen from this, and just people and nature, and somebody wants 10 of something, wants to give one back, and that's the unfortunate also aspect. But so what was again, let's talk about maybe not what happened as much as, but maybe your brain and your thought process, right? So like day versus night. I know a lot of guys, they fish at night because they can, because they don't have to take time off work, that live a little closer, or there are guys that come here and stay and they sleep all day, and they live like college kids and they fish all night. Because in the past, I would say, I think there was more big fish caught at night. My personal philosophy, just again, my total opinion, is that I think that back, living right here, I would go out and night fish, and if I saw two people, it was something, and I knew who they were, and everybody kind of mind their P's and Q's. Now at night, I don't think people understand in general about traffic and what it does to fish. Like I've watched it now with, Mega Live. I've watched it with underwater cameras. I've watched it with gill nets with the DNR and tagging, like on how these guys just run over the fish that they're fishing, which is a whole nother rant for another day. And we've done that. But to the point of it is at night, there's so many people fishing. I think they almost cancel each other out a lot of times, where those bigger fish are like, nah, Nah. And you catch 3-4 pounders all day long and you're like, oh yeah, great. But then big fish are like, no. Because even this year we fished a couple of times at night on guide trips where I'm not going to tell you how big the waves are because I don't want to condone the behavior. And really it just kind of somewhat accidental. I'll leave it at that. But and the quality of the fish was so much more. And I chalked that up to, again, there was nobody, there was no traffic, spooking these things.
Well, for us, I mean, we plan on coming out to fish. We come out to fish. I mean, we're not going to fish 24 hours, but when we decide to get out on the water, as long as it's safe to get out there, what we feel is safe, we'll do that. But we'll stay out until we're done. We
did
a little bit of food.
He did. We don't normally night fish around our house, but he bought all the lights for the boards and everything, and we planned on staying out there until we were starving or whatnot outside of the snacks we brought on the boat. But we definitely planned on making the most, especially because we originally planned on 5 days, and we thought we might be able to get a day and a half in, during our stay. So we definitely were going to take as much time on the water and try to maximize our opportunities. Luckily, our first day happened to be a very productive day.
Oh, that's kind of it's a little bit of a buzzkill. I'm not going to lie to you. From a storytelling standpoint, that's kind of shitty. But I mean, so then on the 4th day, we were down to our last little Debbie's food cake, and then, yeah, no. So the first day, so I guess I'm just gonna jump ahead because I'm like ADD as hell. So when that board goes back, did you know that was one of the one? Maybe not a 12, but you knew that, hey, this is one we're gonna need, or is this like somebody who's over here eating a little Debbie cake? Be honest.
I'm gonna back you up just a hair,
Okay.
Ross, because
I probably need that.
We were fishing, and we were on good marks, solid marks on the graph, and we were getting close to that spot that we had caught the fish in 21. But my wife had sent me a text, and she says, are you on any better fish? So I text her back, I said no. And, she knows what what we like to do, as far as fishing, and that we do it hard. And she says, I'm sorry. And, I sent her back a text. I said, it's November and we're fishing. I said, what could be better? And, I said, it only takes one fish and it can happen anytime. And, karma happened, and I'd say, Ross, I'd be lying to say that it was longer than 3 minutes from sending that text that mill board went back. And when I picked up the rod, it was one of those ones that it just started taking line, and it just went back slow. It wasn't one of those fast ones. It just went back slow and just kept going back steady, and it took some line. Got a story to tell you why I don't touch the drag once it's set, but
this sounds like one of those redhead and ginger fire moments here. Do tell. That's what we're doing here.
Well, hold on. You can finish the story on Lake Erie. I want to tell this one. So, fishing.
Like this already.
We did some co-angling on the National Walleye Tour, and we gained a lot of friends. And one of the guys that we started helping was Dave Cole. And up in Sault Ste. Marie, we were pre-fishing one of the tournaments. The tournament he ended up winning. We were fishing this one area, and we were looking at this pinch point, and there was, when I say boulders, I'm saying boulders the size of your truck. They're huge. So we took our time and drove around, pinpointed them all, and then Dave came up with a plan, and we're trolling through there. We get a decent one, and I don't remember what number it was, but we caught 2-3 decent ones that are like 3 to 4 times the size of the fish that are in Detour Village, like huge. So we leave, we try to get another one, and we go. He says, "I want to do it again." So set all the rods, and another one goes back. Me and Dave are getting all excited, and Ed grabs the rod, and he's reeling it in. And next thing you know, he looks over at Dave. He's like, the line broke. The line broke. And Dave grabbed the rod and checked the drag. And Ed had tightened up the drag a little bit. And to say he lit into Ed about
I know Dave. I know what came.
Oh, he started yelling at him, "You don't ever touch the drag! Don't ever touch the drag!"
Oh
And,
yeah.
you know, I love Ed. He's my best friend. And I just saw him like shrink down, like, oh my God. And, you know, it still proved that the fish were there. You know, he ended up having a successful tournament. But forever since that day, Ed does not touch the drag.
Well, see, maybe we had Dave will probably try to take credit for this win now. Hearing that.
Oh, he already has. He already
probably
has.
will.
Yeah. See, I know all these guys. That's any just so you know, you could insert any tournament walleye fisherman into that. You know, I fished Lake Erie one time. Remember I told you? But yeah, that's funny because it's people that get in the boat with me too. It's like the less they know, the more they try to just, and you're like, what are you? Well, I just like, would you watch Bill dance last week on? You're like, what are you doing? But so we
So,
learned
Ross,
a
we'll back it
valuable
up.
lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at
You
that
learned a
point, we
hard
hadn't.
lesson, and Len is very happy that you did,
Oh.
right? Because then you didn't, you know, because I mean, if you guys are fighting over one sturgeon and one walleye in a New York derby, can you imagine if you'd have broke two boats off? Because that's how I'm looking at this shit.
And
That-
you know, it
that's
was a learning
wonderful.
experience. I mean, it was early in my career of fishing for big fish, and you know, the fish that we've got on our lake are 19, 20-inch fish, and you know, you got a good tournament fish, it's a 23-incher. So this fish, I mean, to the end of the story, we ended up hand lining that fish in after we went back and retrieved the board. But at that point, it was a lesson from Dave of what to do if you can't get any line, whether you're walking the fish back and forth, whether you're slowing the boat down. It comes down to communication. And even through Dave's tongue lashing, there were some notes of wisdom in there that have stuck with us. And we've learned, you know, to take a look at the drags, take a look at the line, check our line, and then, you know, slow the boat down when you need to and talk on the boat. So that's what we did.
I must say that 1,000 times a day with my guys. I'm like, you're gonna have an ex-wife if you keep up this poor communication. That's my line in the boat. It's guys they get quieter when you need to be, you know, communicating more, right?
And that's big. I mean, you know, if you're not talking about what's going on, you're not in sync. And the one thing that Lenny and I have done over the course of the last 15 years of really fishing hard together is we communicate. I mean, it's a talk. Sometimes it's nonverbal communication. You know, if he's thinking it, I'm saying it. If I'm saying it, he's thinking it. And you know, you get to that point. But you know, as I'm reeling in this fish, Ross, it's tugging and it's taking line, and I'm backing it off, and you know, Lenny's slowing the boat down, and you know, I said to him, and this breaks our superstition, Ross. I said to him, I said, you know, this is a good one, and you know, Lenny told me, he says, shut up, and you know, and I fought this fish for quite a long time. I you know, it was probably in the 15-minute range by the time we got it close to the boat, but you know, it took line, and we still hadn't seen it, and I said, dude, this is a really good fish. And at that point, he told me to shut the F up. And, you know, it's probably a shad coming in sideways like it was earlier. And, you know, at that point, you know, the head shakes. I knew it was different, but it surfaced and came in. But yeah, I mean, I knew that it was a good fish. I didn't know how good it was when it was first on, but we knew it was a big fish. I mean, we've caught enough, you know, 10-pounders up in New York. Out of Henderson, and a few, you know, 8, 9-pounders out on Erie. But this is our biggest fish on Lake Erie, fishing out here. And I have
Good time to get it.
Yeah, this is my personal best overall. So I mean, you know, from that standpoint, Ross, it definitely was it was a game changer for us.
So did it cross? Like, let's say, was it on? Bear with me here. Was it on the port or the starboard?
It was on the starboard side.
Okay, so when you got close and you had the board off, because I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but just when you took the board off and you had X number of feet, like whatever left, did it start going like on the other side of the motor, like towards the port?
We picked it up on the we netted it on the port side.
So it did
So
go over.
yeah, yeah. We
Yeah, yeah.
and I'll tell you, we don't fight the fish to keep it on one side. We let the fish do what the fish does, and
Well, yeah, just my point. Just like today, we had two really big fish today, and it just seems like for people, probably shouldn't tell like my guide clients. I don't want them to hear this because I tried to, like, oh, I think it's just like you. I don't think it's a sheephead because they go into that deer mode. You know what I mean? They like get like buck fever with it. But a lot of the biggest walleyes, they don't necessarily fight the hardest, but there's that so much more weight, like you said, that you're not used to, or those little pulls. For short periods of time, you just have to kind of wait through. But they tend to cross over in the other side of the motor from where the side that they come on for whatever reason. And that's a little trick that I've kind of learned. When that happens, I maybe extend the net out, get a little ready, make sure some things aren't jacked up, because as I always like to say, preparation causes separation. So
well, what I'll say,
Almost
Ross,
use a
is
shorter net on this one.
yeah, we glean a lot of information off of listening to people, and that's a nugget of information that I'm sure that I'll follow in the back of my mind going forward. So I appreciate that.
So before, I mean, when you knew it was a better one, right? Like, I think it's fair to say, I mean, you guys are reasonable people. You're not gonna be like, yeah, we knew that was the tournament winner, because some guys, that's their mindset. But you knew it was one. Hey, we want to get this in the boat. Like, is that fair? So
Absolutely.
when that happens, is there a game plan? Because in my boat, okay, I've got guys trying to hand me 50s when they see a board going back, and they're like, "Hell, screw Bob, forget him. Here's $50." And I'm thinking, I don't know, with inflation and everything, guys, if we got two boats, $50, I'm thinking you're gonna have to dig a little deeper in the bibs there. But is there, in all seriousness, was there a plan for like who is the real guy, or is this just it happens, it happens?
Well, anytime that Lenny and I are fishing, he sets rods on one side, I set rods on the other. So he uses his lures on one side, and I use my lures on the other. Um, but I'll tell you, going into this, um, Lenny and I have got an agreement. Everything's 50-50, regardless. So, I mean, costs are 50-50 and winnings are 50-50. So, I mean, really, it doesn't ever matter who's the real man. And, we're out there to do what we like to do. And so from that standpoint, this time it happened to come on my side, and that's why I was the real man and he was the net guy.
Well, I just wondered if Ed, you were like the Iceman and Len's the jumpy one, even though he's the quieter one, I think. But like, what is some of these guys, like, they just gonna and they can't, if it's over 4 pounds, you know what I mean, they go nuts. Or you tell them, hey, this was a big walleye, and all of a sudden they just do completely different things. Like I call it buck fever, but that kind of deal.
Now I'll say that we've been doing this long enough that we've caught some pretty big fish. I mean, the day that before this that we had caught our personal best, we caught them the same day, over the
On the
same
same
mark,
exact waypoint.
going opposite directions. And that was up in Henderson. He got an 11 pounder, and I got one that was, I think, 11.4. On the next pass coming back. But I mean, up there in Henderson, I mean, there's days that you don't get anything, but we put I think 9 walleye out of 12 strikes in the boat, and I don't think a single one of them was below 5 pounds, and we had 4 that were over 8. So that's a great day for us up there. But I mean, again, that's early in our fishing. But like I said, I don't have a problem with talking, and I'll let Len do some talking here.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've seen, from our conversation here, because I first thing I said when I talked to you guys and doing some texting is like, I don't want to hear anything. Like, I want to be surprised, because I think it's just better for everybody's sake. But I think the thing that people are listening to this, I think a lot of people take the wrong stuff away. Like, we're going to ultimately talk about what bait and this and that, right? Scruffy's over there liking it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I've got a new one.
We had
I'm
Pete
sorry.
Mania on here a couple of years ago, and he gave his dog a good little whack right on camera, and we're like, "Ooh, Pete is going to be coming now." But anyway, I think the thing that people, we'll get to the bait and all that stuff pretty quick, but I think the thing that people that's what they want to hear, you know what I mean, or what color it is. And if you were to look at 10 years of things, and because I've known several guys that have done it, and I've had a couple of fish that were in that caliber that people weren't signed up. So number one, everybody sign up for everybody in the boat, be signed up. But I think that the communication thing and working together is so important, because I can tell you that I've seen fish on, and just as a guide, or seen other people, and they have the opportunity, just like a deer walking in front of your stand, but they're not equipped to handle it. You guys talking about the drags and all these things, and that's not the sexy fun stuff. Like, that's the free throws, right? And everybody wants to see this half court bombs, and it's like, well, what happens more often, a half court bomb or free throws? And I think that, those are the things to really focus on if somebody really is listening to this, to say, hey, next year I want to do better in the brawls or the derbies or whatever you want to call them, or just in general, just, yeah, I want to go out to Erie, and yeah, it's awesome, but I want to improve my game out there. And would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what Ed was saying in that one tournament where we weren't doing good, and we were both getting frustrated, and it almost came to blows. Where after that we really sat down and talked, and we're like, dude, we got to get systems, and we evolved that system to now where, like Ed said, it's sometimes we're communicating, sometimes we're not, but we know what each other's doing, and it's we'll communicate how he's setting up one side and how I'm setting up the other side, where he may fish totally different baits, what I'm doing, but we know what depths, if we're trolling, what we're targeting or whatnot, and really trying to have those systems, because like it doesn't matter if we're doing any tournament, to loot something local or whatever, we're never really nervous, because now we feel that we have the systems in place to try to be successful, as long as we did our homework and our pre-fishing good. Obviously fish have fins and they swim, unfortunately, kind of don't stick in the spot you want them to. But having those systems in place to know your plan A, your plan B, your plan C have helped us in being pretty good tournament anglers. We're not the top of the top by any stretch of the imagination, but our systems that we put in place help us be successful in whatever we do. And we always think we have a shot. Every loot event we go into, we think we're going to cash in every one of them. Have we yet? No, but we're going to cash, and we will not stop until we start cashing in them, because we try to do our homework, we try to get the systems in place, and hopefully it'll turn out to be successful in the loot tournament series.
Well, you picked the right one to cash in. I mean, I'm trying to be the positive guy here. I mean, there's you could win every other loot, for Timbuktu, and you're probably still ahead of the game here. But so let's get to it. We got this board going back. We got the starboard middle board going back. Walk me through. This is like the juice now, right? So walk me through exactly what's happening. Ed, you're reeling this thing in. You're trying to compose yourself, not because you think it's a winning fish, but you just know it's a good one, and you don't want Len to give you the look.
Well,
or a Dave Cold talk.
Well, I don't think that Lenny can do a Dave Cold talk, and I'll give him he's got a lock on that. But we had to slow the boat down, and we had some waves out there that day. But so I'm walking the fish back and forth, and I'm gaining some line, I'm losing some line, I'm getting some head tugs. Lenny will always take the board off from my side, from the starboard side. So he's up there, and he gets the board off, and we were running the 50 plus 2 ounce and running them back. So I think I was targeting 27 feet, and we were fishing probably over 38 feet of water at that point. But so we've got 50 feet of line back. From that standpoint, and it's still taking a long time to get this fish in, and it's staying down, and as we're getting closer to the boat, it's straight down, and it crosses over to the other side. So Lenny's always standing there ready with the net, and he likes to extend it out. He's willing to stretch, and he's got one hell of a reach out there, where I'm the short stubby guy. So, I'm trying to just stay in the back of the boat, but it stayed down. It popped up for a brief second. And when we looked at it, we both looked at each other, and that's a good one. And it went back down, and, Lenny's yelling at me, lift, lift, lift. I can't see anything. And I'm just trying to keep it on. And once I lifted up, he was able to scoop underneath it. I saw the head hit the back side of the net, and at that point it started to drop in and the hook come out, and down in the net it went. And, we've been in enough times out there fishing and had big fish that came unglued at the back of the boat, or just, 50 feet out. It happens, but I think karma was on our side that day, and again, that's where the front hook comes into play. That front hook catches the net. You big fish like that. So I don't know whether it just came out because it got in the net, if it caught the net, but nonetheless, Lenny scooped it up, and he's trying to wrangle this thing back into the boat, and I'm hanging onto the net and hanging onto him, and he's backing up, and he lays it down on the floor, and it was just like, holy cow, look at the girth on that thing. And
it was kind of almost like an unveiling, because it was a Ranger net, and as the fish hit, and you got all the black around it with the net, and as it laid the hoop down, it was like, no, I mean, I'll never forget it as long as I live, obviously, but it was like an unveiling. And I remember looking at that fish and just slowly looking up at Ed, and just like my jaw on the floor, like, oh
yeah, that's a fish of a lifetime, regardless of the derby, right? I mean, forget the prize money and all that. Like, if that doesn't excite you, that's the worst thing as a guide, to be honest with you, because I've had fish, in my boat, 13, 14 pounds with guide clients, and they're like, so, like, what is that? And do we eat it? And you're like, no. All of the people that would appreciate that, and this person doesn't even know what the hell it is, and they're never going to walleye fish again, and they're here because their kids are at Cedar Point, and you're like, no, not you. But so
needless to say, we threw some punches, some hugs, and I'm surprised neither of us had any bruises anywhere on our body from punching each other so much.
So we have already kind of given a little bit of a spoiler alert that we had a scale incident, but you guys had the experience to know that even in the mild chaos there, right? That like, hey, we need to further investigate this. Did you have a plan in place? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of guys that like, you see them text. I've had guys call me and they're like, hey, we got a big one. Like, where do we go to weigh this thing in again? So did you guys have a plan of like, hey, when we catch a fish like this, we are going to stop fishing, or, hey, we're on big fish, we need to keep fishing? Or
no, absolutely. It was, hey, we're stopping. And once we knew that the fish was a weighable fish, it was, there was no question, we're going back in. We knew that there was a weigh station in Huron for the Brawl. We didn't have the exact address, but we knew that it was there. And so that's where our plan was. So, I mean, at that point it was pulling the rest of the boards. I was taking the live well apart to get that fish in there. And we wanted to get it in the live well as quick as possible. And I'll say that, we've never had a problem with fish management and keeping, fish alive. But yeah, it was one of those ones that you looked and you laid it in there against some of the 4-pound fish that were in the live well, and it looked like it could eat 3 of them. And we're like, holy cow. And, to say Lenny's jaw was on the floor, I think my jaw was on the floor. I mean, we were standing there looking at each other with our mouths wide open, and, slapping each other and okay, let's get things wrapped up. Don't even put anything away. Just get it wrapped up. We'll get the boat back to the launch. We'll put it on the trailer. At that point, we'll go from there. We had some friends that were fishing with us, and they actually came off the water, I think about 11:30. They started with us in the morning, and they went back in for lunch. And Lenny
that was an expensive lunch, perhaps.
We'll I mean, from that standpoint, Lenny and I looked at each other, and we know Johnny and his son, and Chris Banuski that was out there. They went back in because they wanted to fish late into the night, because they knew the night bite was pretty good. But like I said, Lenny and I knew we were staying on the water until we were coming off, and we had no plan other than fishing down there. So we turned around and headed back towards Huron, and just based off of the waves, it was probably about a 45-minute trek back. And I think as we got closer and closer into shore, that the waves, were less based off of the way the wind was coming in. So we were able to make it back there in about 35 minutes. And we had texted them to meet us at the launch. So they actually disconnected their boat and went over to the weigh station to let them know that we're coming in with a good fish to weigh, and then they met us at the launch. So we did have that plan.
Yeah, I think, for people that are listening to this, I think you said you were launched out of Huron that day, right?
Yes, sir.
So people that are listening to this that don't have any idea, I may or may not have been there today myself. And there's probably, I've never put a clock on it as many times as I've been up and down that river, which is, I don't know if it's into the thousands, but it's well into the hundreds. And that's a long no wake for you guys listening to this. And that had to be a really tense, like, I hope it doesn't spit up a shad, because I'm that's how I am. I'm like, if it spits up a shad, this could cost us 2 boats. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit of chaos moments there, right?
And from that standpoint, Ross, I mean, we fished some tournaments that I think our first NWT, we were up in Saginaw Bay, and we launched. It was almost an hour to get from the launch to the mouth of the bay. So yeah, we've seen where that long ride can affect the fish. I mean, that was a summer tournament, so you're
And
dealing
your
with a
head.
lot of warm with it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'd say that there was just as much excitement in Lenny and I that I mean, we at that point we didn't know that we had the winning fish, but we knew we had a good fish and we were going to place on the board. And that was the big thing that we wanted is, hey, we're from New York, we're fishing Lake Erie, and we want to place on the board. And yeah, everybody wants to win, but I mean, we were ecstatic that hey, look, we've got a fish to weigh, and just that sheer joy. I'll tell you, when we got to the bait shop, it was it turned from sheer joy to elation. And Alec there, or Eric over at Central Bait, he weighed the fish, but I think there were more high fives and punches and hugs there because there was more guys there, and it just disbelief of where she landed on the scale.
To kind of bounce back here is something to get people who are hopefully listening close, because if they weren't listening this close, they probably aren't going to do good fishing. But when you mentioned using 2-ounce weights, I would say if in the first, let's say 15 years of my career, if you weren't catching them good, you probably weren't fishing high enough, at times 3, 4, 5 feet down. And not that doesn't play now at times, but it seems like that window just keeps getting smaller and smaller, whether the water's cleaner or whatever. We'll leave that for the biologist or some other hypothesis for another day. But today, I would say in the last 5+ years, it seems like if you're not catching good, you need to be fishing deeper. That would be, and I'm not saying like, the week you were out or the day you were out, but in general, even a majority this year, like when fish should have been higher, that they were just like, where I wouldn't even normally place lines in the water column. And if you aren't, even now, like today, fish are really, really still right now, really deep, which traditionally they have suspended more, especially when we got those shad schools. But so I'm going to guess, especially if it was your middle board, as a guy who maybe knows a little bit about walleye trolling here, if you had a 2-ounce weight on your middle board, you probably had some hypothesis or idea that you wanted to fish deeper. Is that true?
Well, we spread out across the water column, so I mean, we'll always run our outside board high because we've had those fish that come in anywhere from 8 foot down to 15 foot down. So I think that we had practiced and really just taken a look at spreading the baits out, and that's where the communication comes down. With Lenny and I mean, if he's going to fish a couple up high, and I'm going to focus more on the mid and lower range, or we'll just spread our baits and cover the water column across the spectrum. We don't normally fish the same depth exactly unless we are on it. We fished some tournaments up here that we've never fished with dipsies before for walleye, and I think last year Scotty Getchy had given us some information as far as how to do it, and Lenny's done a little bit of dipsy fishing, but we ran a couple of weeks that we were out here just fishing strictly dipsies and fishing down deep, and it's something different. We've seen a lot of big fish come deep, but I'll tell you that we also had one tournament that we had a 4-pound upgrade in the prop wash 30 feet behind the boat, taking a board off, and that fish hit right 30 feet behind the boat in the prop wash with a bandit, and just about ripped the pole out of my hand. So I mean, live scope, I'd say, forward facing sonar is good to see where they're setting up in the column ahead of the boat, so that you can read where some of the bigger fish are at depth. We've tried to experiment with that. I mean, we are novices when it comes to forward facing sonar,
But that's a really good point. Like how my buddy always says, just fish the dots. And if you're using something like Mega Live and putting it towards the bow, even though your lines aren't anywhere near the beam, you'll see those fish out in front of the boat that are maybe 10 or 15 feet down. When they get to the boat, they go 15, 20, 25 feet down. And then when you angle it back, they go right back up 10, 15. They basically do like an upside down roller coaster there. They sense that boat. And that's kind of like what I was kind of saying earlier with, I don't think people realize how much boat traffic it affects, let alone ding dongs that are driving right through on pad. Even if you're just using an electric motor and, you're fishing pretty quiet, they know you're there. They know.
And one of the things that to kind of tie that in, here, but one thing that we've learned over the years is when we first started, it was like, oh, there's a pack of boats, they got to be on fish. And throughout tournament fishing, we've learned that we don't want to be anywhere near a boat. We kind of like the fact that we kind of try to be able to put things together. So we're fishing where sometimes we can't even see another boat, but yet we're on good walleye. And when this fish actually hit, we could only see one other boat near us. Could not see another boat. There was one other boat near us. So, maybe that helped us without all that noise and vibration.
Yeah. And no, it didn't hurt. Right. No, it didn't hurt. So how fast were you guys going when you actually got the bite on this one?
Well, I used Fishhawk. A buddy of ours, Craig Sleeman, has taught us that the current is definitely different out in Erie, and I think we were doing 2.3 at the top of the water, and I think it was hovering between 1.9 and 2.0 down at depth. So at that point, there was about a 0.3 difference where we were running, and we were going. Yeah, everybody says keep your information tight. Listen, the water changes out there, and the fish change out there. So I mean, we've had good luck running from west to east, and obviously the wind was blowing that direction. So I mean, we were liking to go with the wind that day, and so we were running from west to east, and like I said, it was a 0.3 difference.
The current people, I just don't think they understand on how huge it is. I mean, and the Fishhawk is absolutely mandatory gear. And guys listening to this, and they're like, well, I don't want to spend the money on that. And I'm like, how many custom painted crankbaits do you have in your box that are just total pieces of shit? And, $15, $20 a piece. And then you're like, how about this is something you're going to use every single time? To me, it's like rain gear. You better have good rain gear if you're doing what we're doing here or talking about doing, and you better have a Fishhawk. I actually helped co-design. You probably don't know, it's the X2, because I absolutely,
that's what we use.
Yeah, I cobbled up that thing. Yeah, so maybe I could get like a Christmas gift or something. I don't know. The owner of Fishhawk, literally, this is a true story. He literally, I wrote a book about probably at least 15 years ago, and he called me up one day and he's like, could you turn to page like 52 or whatever it was in the book? And I'm like, what's your point? And he's like, what did you do to my unit? And I had rigged it all up to be portable. And so we sat down on literally the first X2, and actually ultimately what it is with that kind of Chinese little straw deal or whatever you want to call it for the sliding transducer that was done on a napkin in Orlando, Florida at ICAST, because that way we didn't have to have, for you guys to listen to this, especially if you have a small boat or aluminum boat, you don't want to put a downrigger or something like that on. That the X2, the whole point of it is to be portable. Everything's battery. You don't have to have anything fixed because you can put it in the compartment or whatever. So 100% an important deal. And it's nice to hear that the guys utilize that. So.
Well, like I said, we glean information from everybody that we fish with. And, I'll say that we're blessed with a lot of good friends. And Craig Sleeman's one of the guys that you can't find a better guy out there that is willing to talk to you and
I
give you
probably
some
could find
information.
a guy better than Craig, and his name's Ethan Sleeman. Okay.
Oh. So Craig's
We'll find out
Craig,
if he listens to the podcast
yeah.
on the next Jerry Springer. But
So yeah, so I mean he's always talked it up. He's always used it on any body of water that he goes. So I mean, I think Lenny bought his first, and we couldn't have one on one boat and not have one on the other boat. So that's what got me to go out there and use it, and we use it religiously now.
so did we learn anything on this trip? Obviously, when you win, you're the winner. Like, I mean, this is obvious, but you can always still learn something from it. It's like next year, what do you think you're going to take into, whether it's equipment or preparation or doing things to try to get the one? Because odds are not in your favor. We're going to do this again. I'm not trying to be a downer here. I mean, you guys are still the envy of everyone on Lake Erie and beyond. But
Ed, you told me we were going to win again next year.
Yeah. Ed is the salesman. I see this already. Those gingers, you got to watch them. Watch them Redbeards. But so, I mean, seriously though, like in preparation wise, or because I already see, not knowing you guys, like in our little bit of time talking together, like that you're guys that are like, okay, we're going to regroup and we're going to come back bigger and better. And we're not going to make that mistake. So what are a few of those either mistakes or preparation or gear or something that you don't want to be caught without?
So one of the things that Lenny and I are big on is moon phase and the feeding times. And I'll say that we both use the same app. We're looking at the major feeding times and the minor feeding times based off of the moon phase. And, from that standpoint, and I don't care whether it's a 4-fish day or a 1-fish day, those feeding times are pretty true, whether you're deer hunting or whether you're fishing.
So how did the fish fall into that?
Right at the beginning of the minor feeding time for the 24th of November, and and I'll say that we do a little bit of research on when the big fish came last year as well, and if my memory serves me correctly, it was the 24th of November, and that was a night fish, so that was towards the I think one of the major feeding times last year, that same day. So with us, we've got I take the vacation time for Thanksgiving week, and it's normally late in it's been late in the year the last couple of years. So I'm kind of bound to that time frame of scheduling the vacation, the time that I'd come out. But we want to maximize on the opportunity of what we've got. We take a look at the wind forecast and how it's set up days prior, and where the pressure is, and so weather has a lot to do with it.
Well, you guys are, just so you know, you're the only two people that wanted the wind to blow after the 24th. Just so you know,
we didn't
there
want
were
it to
a few
wind.
texts, a few phone calls,
we wanted the water to go.
Praying on Mother Nature.
I mean, I'm not against you guys, and it's going to sound that way with a few of these comments. I realize they're piling on here. We're like snowballing, but I mean, kind of like, I feel like, the weather helped you guys. No offense. Like, I mean, just getting out this fall was so brutal. And I mean, you had to look at that because it's just like tournaments. I mean, it's been the joke forever. Even our buddy Johnny Gilman, when he won one of the tournaments and it got cut down in a day, and you're like, yeah, who wants to fish today? Everybody but John Gilman, or, whoever, like you guys, like, 6 to 8 footers, ferry boat's not running. Perfect.
Well, if we were not talking about it, somebody from out there was sending us the wave forecast and like, you guys look good today. It looks good for you today. And it's, hey, need a little bit of extra luck.
Yeah. Right. Hey, take it when you can get it.
Oh,
You got, that's
again,
like anything. You got to capitalize when you can.
Yeah. And we were, like I said, we were going to cancel our trip because the wind forecast was horrible, that we didn't think we were going to get out. And, as the week got better, we had a half day window, then a day window. Then, once we hit the day and a half window, we were like, we're going, and we'll take our chances. But our trip got cut down last year by 3 days because of the wind. And one thing that I've learned is you don't take chances. Like I said, it's just fishing for us, and we're pretty competitive. But we've learned to trust our gear, but we've also learned to say when it's time to get off the water.
Well, is there anything else you could leave us with that besides your peak feeding time thing? And obviously a crankbait with a snap weight. I think that odd thing to, I'm just going to put this out there. Could this be one of the last years that it's won trolling with the way that forward facing sonar is coming on and being able
I'll
to
tell you
just
what,
individually target fish?
if you're out there on Lake Erie and you're following good fish, I'd say that you've got a good chance. I think the technology has changed, and you see it with a lot of the tournaments that are being won out there right now, whether it's bass or whether it's walleye fishing. But Lake Erie fish are always moving, and I think that the nice thing is with fishing is that anything can happen any day that you're out there fishing, and you know it, even a couple of guys from New York can put some information together and go out and actually land a good fish, and um, like I said, you've got to make your own luck sometimes, and having some knowledge it helps. Um, but to think that we didn't have somebody smiling down on us this day in addition to what we know, I'll take it.
So
To
is
go
this
back
boat
to
for sale? Boats?
One of
the
them's
Warriors
not.
for sale.
Yeah, the Ranger's not.
Oh,
The
see,
Warrior is.
see, I'm not even going to say anything out loud so I don't get in trouble, but I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying there. Nice.
But
Well,
to comment on the forward facing stuff, that's something that, we've both got on our boat, and we've had it for a few years, but yet we haven't actively used it as much. And this past year, in the winter, before season even started, on our local body of water, we said, all right, let's stop, because we're primarily trollers. There's no hiding that, but we were like, we're going to start using forward facing sonar. We got to figure it out. So we started figuring it out a couple days before our tournament locally, and he had his Panoptics that he was putting on the front of my boat, and I had my active target on the back. We were using it, and it was like, okay, this is what it is, and tuning it right in and actually seeing fish. We were jerkbait fishing, and we had a pretty good class of fish, and we were pinpointing them, casting right through them, and it's like, oh my god, we could actually do this. This is actually fun. Where I could only imagine that how that would be on Erie and being able to pinpoint the bigger fish, because we were able to do it on our local lake. We got beat out for first place. We got second place in this tournament, but it was so much fun looking at those screens and pinpointing those and making precise casts to those. It may end up getting won by somebody using active target, being able to do that. And the John Hoyers and all those guys of the world, those coming out to Erie and winning tournaments solely casting with that, it was like, really, I think that was like an eye-opening thing for Lake Erie fishermen. And
sure.
if you're not doing it, I think you're behind in time to add that to your repertoire of tournament fishing.
Well, you can't catch a 12-pounder when you're catching 3s and 4s, and when you can look at them and see that they're 3s or 4s, once you get good at it, it's you're like, nope, not that one. You can be much more selective. But is there anything you'd like to leave us with besides the fact that you guys won 2 more boats than most people listening to this?
I'll say that sometimes color does matter. We've seen that the difference just in the last 3 years of fishing. And even fishing different weeks, patterns change and the colors change. But overcast gold was good, and the spots. I think that we've done very good with baits that have had spots on them. And this bait in particular, obviously, it was painted by Mike Chafin over at Erie Outfitters. But this was a gold bait. It had spots, had a red throat, and it took 85% of the fish that I caught on my side that day. So, I mean,
kind of almost like a chartreuse antifreeze. Wouldn't you almost call it kind of like that, or no?
Yeah, I think he called it antifreeze Wonder Bread, but yeah, something like that. And listen, last year it was I think it was Mountain Dew was the color, and another chartreuse color. So I mean, we've seen colors that matter out there, and sometimes it's in the water column difference, different colors. So I'm not sure if it's always matching the hatch or matching what's out there, but
Not a
in
lot of
this
fire
case,
tiger minnows out there,
yeah.
but yet they catch them, right? No, that's a
Yeah.
good point. I have a lot of guys that work with me. They feel that there are certain colors that don't catch as many fish, but they catch bigger fish, and that's but and those, like you said, those things change too. And that's, if we were to interview the next 10 guys or the previous 10, I'm sure they all have their little philosophy on, and it's just like, I had a guy just the other day in the boat, and he's like, I was running 6 chrome purples, and I said, let me guess, chrome purple was working. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you'll never know what wasn't, right?
Yes.
And that's one of those things. I remember seeing a video in which we were, what you just said, we were getting hit with it where, if we're using like a jig and wrap or something like that, and it's got your favorite color and you're catching, and then all of a sudden they stop biting, then you're changing all these lures and they're not working. And I remember watching a video for Tommy Kimos, and I'll never forget it. He said, well, did you think about what you're actually doing? And, I thought for a second, I'm like, I don't know, what is he talking about? And he's like, so your favorite bait that you're always throwing isn't working. Then all of a sudden you start throwing all these other baits and they're not working. Do you realize that your favorite bait didn't work as well? It's like, when you're pounding fish and catching a ton of fish, take your favorite lure off and test all your other lures, because that's when the fish are biting. When the fish stop biting your favorite lure, why would they want all the ones that you don't want to use? Test those out when the fishing's really good. And, that's kind of stuck with me as far as, okay, when we're actually catching, okay, let's see if they want to hit the purple or the black or the yellow or whatnot. And it's helped a little bit, but you always have your favorite baits.
100%. We've talked about this on previous podcasts and videos that we put out. And it's like, that is when you're catching is the time to experiment, generally, not when you're not. But people, I get it all the time where they're like, we want to fall brawl. Like, whatever that means for, somebody that's going to fish 1 or 2 days a year. They're not putting in, the process that you guys did. And, 5 minutes of not catching, they're like, all right, let's just go for eaters. and you're like, when you are catching a bunch of 4-pounders and you take baits off, people look at me like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, let's see if we can do something different, catch an 8 or 9 or maybe better, and they just, most people, and that's fine. Like, they have a different mindset than you have, but I would say that's, that's the difference between casual fishing and then having that kind of tournament mindset or winning aspect that you've got to do. So I can't thank you guys enough for giving us your time and your insight, because, a lot of guys maybe would say, I don't really want to talk about any of this stuff. But I think you guys are still on the high, so we got you right at the right time. Not too much time to think about this. We have some mutual friends. There could have been some ways of, making your life easier or more difficult. Like, we're not blackmailing you, of course, but right.
Russ, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I mean, I'll say the one thing about fishing that Lenny and I believe is giving back. We wouldn't be where we were if people didn't share techniques and information and teach us. So, I mean, if anything, if we can give a little bit back to help somebody else go out there and have fun, we're on the water from March until November. So, I mean, if we're not on the water, we're in the woods, but or on the ice. So at the end of the day, I mean, if we're not passing along information and especially to the younger generation, if we're not teaching kids, we're not doing it right. So
right on.
Appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us.
Likewise, thanks. Thanks for tuning into the Bigwater Podcast. We've had Ed and Len here giving you guys a whole bunch of insight. If you didn't learn anything from that, you probably are a stick in the mud or think you know more than you do. But probably not going to win another boat again, Ed and Len. No offense, but if you do, we're going to have you on again. How about that? Is that a fair shake?
That's
I promise to come back and try.
Good deal. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone, to the Bigwater Podcast. If you can't find us, I don't know what's the matter with you. You definitely can't find a walleye, because we're on all the download platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and all that good stuff. So until the next episode, you guys go try to win something. Maybe just don't take up any like bass tournaments, though. That'd be bad.